Okay, I'm excited about this. I mean, I'm not really excited to out myself and throw myself under the bus and embarrass myself, but I'm kind of excited about this. I'll pretend someone's asking me. What have you learned the hard way in your relationship, Sam? What did you figure out doesn't work? What doesn't work? God, I'm like, did any of it work? Did any of it work? Not really. I mean, unless I'm going to share my whole life story with you. Man, it took like 2 minutes for what was a funny topic a minute ago to become kind of a sad topic really quickly. I'm like, none of it works. There's very little that I've done in relationships that has worked. So then I'm sitting here thinking, like, what does the definition of worked mean? Like, it worked if I was successful in it. It worked if I experienced my signature from it. It worked if it brought out my true self. It didn't work if I was bitter. It didn't work if I was, in my not self. It didn't work if it felt like a failure. So that makes me ask myself, like, where am I bitter? What relationships am I still holding any bitterness over that experience, even though I'm not in relationship anymore? So I must have learned a lot of what didn't work because I have broke the bond with every relationship I've ever been in. I have the most bitterness around my marriage. I'm not bitter that I'm divorced. I, if anything, have bitterness over how long I was in a relationship that didn't bring me my signature, that didn't bring me recognition. I didn't find human design until I was already separated from my ex-husband. And I had my own reasons for wanting to separate, but then when I found human design and figured out what my design was, and I very much believed in like what my original body graph was showing me. Some people are like, oh my God, I'm a this thing? No, I can't believe it. Like, when I saw what I am as a projector, I knew at my core that that's what I was, and that I had not been living my life the way that it says that we should live our lives in order to feel good, in order to achieve our signature. So when I got the validation of what I am, I really felt this kind of overwhelming sense of like renewed anger, renewed bitterness, and a lot of the anger was actually towards myself. Because knowing that I'm a splenic authority, knowing that it's about what's healthy or not, and that I'm intuitive and that I'm instinctual, I was mad when I realized how much I had ignored that. Like when I got the awareness of what my authority is, how it communicates with me, how to make decisions with it, I did feel this like kind of overwhelming sense of shame, third line, that I had been doing it all wrong. And this thing had been trying to communicate with me, and I recognized how it was trying to communicate with me, but I was basically like, shh, shut the fuck up, intuition. You must be wrong for some reason. You must not be seeing it right. Oh my goodness, I went into my transference all the time. I was always looking through power view. I was always transferred into desire motivation. I wasn't seeing anything correctly, including and especially myself. You know, there were red flags from my ex, and I thought that I was discerning enough to know what those were. And then later on, when you know, red flags warn us that there's danger ahead, that something's not right, something doesn't add up. And I ignored red flags in my marriage until it was too late. You know, there were things that I couldn't come back from, I couldn't recover from, I couldn't forgive, and I was so mad that I didn't see myself in my situation for what it was. I felt stupid. I felt so dumb. I felt ignorant, and I felt like it was my fault. So I guess in many ways what I learned there, you know, I'm trying to pull out like the core lesson from each example I'm going to give you. And the example with what my marriage was, what didn't work in that was not knowing who I was. Like, I truly was so easily influenced. I had no idea who I was. I was always taking in influence, always taking in conditioning. I rarely was able to grasp who I was outside of being a mom and being a wife and being an employee, and I'm not surprised that I didn't see myself. Like, I can't actually have shame about that now. I can only learn what doesn't work and try again. What doesn't work for me is not knowing who I am and allowing the conditioning around me to dictate who I think I am. Another thing that does not work for me in relationships is confusing the idea of belonging with possession, control, objectification, dominance. I have had a want to belong with someone, not to someone. I'm getting much more discerning, much more intentional with my language. That undefined G center has me, you know, looking for love and direction. But I often confused this sense of belonging with someone with belonging to someone in a way that allowed them to objectify me, dominate me, control me. The word possessive I waffle with a little bit, like, especially because being a tribal person, like, I'm a pretty possessive person. And especially when it comes to relationships, like, I am a monogamous person. That's a really funny thing for me to say, that I am a monogamous person, because when I was with my ex-husband, we practiced polyamory. And I'll be honest, everybody thought it was my idea, but it wasn't really. Like, I can see how I guided the relationship that way, but multi-partnered relationships would never have come up if I didn't feel like there was something wrong with me for not having the same sexual drive as my partner. Sacral people, honestly, they need sexual outlets. They need to burn off that sacral energy. It is healthy for sacral people to orgasm a lot. And as a projector, I didn't recognize that I was an outlet for someone else's extra sacral energy, that I was a satisfying activity for this person. You know, I was still in this place in relationship where it was like husband, wife, man, woman. Like, I didn't know about generator, projector. I felt like I was being used. I felt like I was expected to be of service more frequently than felt good for me, or more than I wanted to. And so one of my ways of dealing with this was to allow and encourage my partner to explore intimate relationships outside of our marriage. And what's really interesting is that since being divorced, my ex still identifies as polyamorous. I have not been polyamorous once since leaving that relationship. What I am is incredibly monogamous. And I wasn't able to honor that in my existing marriage. I learned the hard way that I cannot keep up with sexual sacral demands. And it's not healthy for me to even try. If those kind of demands are being put on me in a relationship, that person doesn't really recognize me. They don't really know who I am or what's good for me or what's healthy for me. They're simply looking at something they can get from me that ultimately is to make them feel better. And that feels really gross to me now. That feels pretty disgusting, actually. I had a very, very classic third line on again, off again relationship with a emotional manifestor. And what I learned two very, very big lessons with this person. Don't initiate a manifestor. If you're a projector, do not initiate a manifestor. It's terrible. They're angry a lot. You're bitter basically all of the time, and it's very confusing. And the other really important thing I learned from this lesson, don't be with someone who is not self. The manifestor that I dated had zero interest in human design. Zero interest in it, didn't care about it, didn't believe in it. If they don't believe in it, obviously they're not going to have any interest in learning how to treat me according to what I require, right? Like, I don't know what I was out to prove in that relationship, but it consistently blew up in my face. And eventually, as a third line, you just have to realize when something is not going to work, has never worked, and is never going to work, and you need to stop trying. Now, I'm a projector who does not use dating apps, but it's not like I've never been on one. In fact, if anything, I'm like, do I have a little bit of like residual from the fact that I met my ex-husband on a dating app 13 years ago? 12 years, 13 years ago. Oh my God, I'm feeling older than I'd like to right now. It all started on a dating app, and I'm just not interested. But when I think about why, like, what was it about these that I don't like? Being a projector on a dating app is ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. What do? Like, you just sign up and hang out with your profile and wait for somebody to start a conversation with you? But, you know, you've got the awareness as a projector, like, okay, well, they need to invite me, and I need to get my recognition, and I need to get my invitation, I need to get my compensation. Like, when you think about what it is to be recognized and invited on a dating app, like, what information do these people have in order to be able to recognize you? What people recognize on a dating app is your physical appearance. It's like, that's why Tinder is so popular, because it really appeals to the surface, base, not self motivation of most people, which is like attractiveness, genetic imperative, sex. Like, what are you gonna recognize me for as a projector on a dating app? You got a tiny little spot for a bio. What are you gonna do? Like, you can't put your channel information through. Like, when we're recognized as projectors, we're recognized for our channels above all else. Projected channels is what makes us projectors. When you're getting recognized for your channel, like if someone wants to recognize me, they're going to recognize me based on my channel of surrender. What am I gonna do on a dating app that is gonna get me recognized as a channel of surrender? Not much. What I'm gonna get recognized for on a dating app is gonna be so superficial. What do I look like? Where do I live? What are my hobbies? What kind of car do I drive? Like, how do I dress? Like, it's all just superficial crap. And there's an expectation that you're going to respond. If somebody sends you a message, even if they send you a message attempting to give you like half-ass recognition and an invitation, you gotta reply. You gotta respond. As soon as the projector gets in and they start responding, they're ultimately going to be trying to like guide this person and have deep conversations, and it's not really going to go anywhere because it's not really the point of these apps. Like, in many ways, people meeting on apps feels like they're shooting themselves in the foot before they try and go running with somebody else. Like, it sounds like significantly more effort than it's worth, and effort equals energy, which is not something projectors have much of. So, hard pass. Okay, what doesn't work for me in relationships is being with someone who doesn't understand aspects about my design and pushes me to, in theory, reject aspects of myself. So, consecutive determination. I am not at the point where I actually eat one ingredient and only one ingredient. I'm way closer, way closer than I ever have been in my life. But there are still a few things that I eat that have like a couple things going on in them. Now, at this point, let's just say that I am a super simple eater. Food is a huge homogenizing force. What does not work for me in a relationship is to be with somebody that does not accept how I eat. Rather than hearing how I eat, seeing how I eat, and just being like, cool, and supporting that, there's a need to change me, condition me, argue with me. Like, if you know that I'm a simple eater and it's what feels good for me, it's very healthy for me, I'm regulated, like, my body is functioning well, my brain is functioning well, but for some reason you're like, no, let me cook these really complex things. No, let's go over to this restaurant where it's like 20 ingredients mixed up. No, let's go over to, you know, my family's house and let's just eat what they're eating. Like, I'm so not interested in that at all. Like, I am not here to argue on behalf of what works for me. I can let you know what works for me and you can accept that or reject that. But if you think, oh, she eats way too simply, I can't wait to change this, I'm not your girl. Not your girl. Big one, huge one. What doesn't work for me in relationships? Co-sleeping. I'm not sharing a bedroom. I'm not sharing a bed. I might share my house. I could share my house. But I am not sharing my bedroom and I am not sharing my bed. We can cuddle, we can watch movies, we can hang out, you know, we can even do fun things. But you can't stay in there. No, hard no. And I'm not gonna stay in your room. Like, I am not sleeping with an energy type. Not a chance in hell. I'm also not sleeping with someone who has defined motors that are different from mine. And don't get me wrong, There's a willingness to try a lot of things. Third line, let's try again. Third line, let's try again. Let's also figure out what doesn't work. Like, I have learned it does not work for me to sleep with a sacral being. Get out of my room. Also, hopefully you're not in the room beside me. Like, go away. Now, then there's the willingness to test, like, well, does it work to co-sleep with another projector? Well, you know what? If that projector has very different definition than you do, also not a good idea. I'm not willing to co-sleep with someone who's on a totally different rhythm than I am. I'm someone who goes to bed early and I wake up early. If you're someone who wants to go to bed late, get out of my room. You don't need to be keeping me up late because you need to be up late. You need to go to your own room and be up late. I really like myself. Like, I really like myself. And the more that I do this, the more I like really love myself. And part of loving myself is loving up. Part of loving myself is waking up as myself. Like, I'm excited to meet me all over again in the morning. Something else I've realized doesn't work for me in relationships is spending either too much time with someone or too little time with someone. And I can definitely see how that's been a pattern in relationships in my life. I am either very alone, totally doing my own thing, loving it, living a certain kind of life, or I'm like locked into somebody else and I spend a lot of time with that person and they end up becoming a big focus for me. I have a hard time balancing the right amount of time with somebody else. I think I'm going to end on this one. This one feels really important to me. One of the most important things I learned about what doesn't work in relationships as a projector, it doesn't work for you to expect your primary intimate person to be your primary source of recognition. I see a lot of patterns with projectors where they're either very focused on their intimate relationship or they're very focused on client relationships. Now, how these projectors feel about themselves, how successful they are, how bitter they are, so much of this gets like locked on to one or the other. And if you have a projector who doesn't feel recognized or successful through client relationships, they have a tendency to put too much pressure on a romantic relationship to be that source of recognition. But in romantic relationships, the idea of compensation is really muddy at best. It's murky, it's dirty, it's confusing. Whereas with clients, it's like, I recognize this in you, I require this from you, I invite you to guide me, here's our transaction. Like, it's much more cut and dry, black and white. Whereas intimate relationships, it gets distorted very, very quickly. And you will notice there are projectors that are either totally sucked into their job or they're totally sucked into their relationship. I have actually a hard time seeing projectors who are good at both. You know, we're one-to-one people. Our focus gets locked in. Our attention gets locked in. If you're not getting recognition really from anywhere in your life, most people will aim for a romantic relationship to make them feel recognized, seen, worthy, valued, appreciated. But it feels like not only short-term gratification, it's fleeting, right? Like it's so much harder to pull off in a romantic relationship. It creates an odd sense of codependency. Like you have to keep your partner pleased in order for them to recognize you. Most projectors in relationships will honestly say that they don't get enough praise from their partner. They don't get enough encouragement. They don't get enough positive words from them. They don't get enough recognition, right? Like they're not getting enough compliments. They're not being celebrated enough. And when you're not getting that from your intimate relationship, it's pretty easy to take the attention out of that relationship and put it into something else that is going to meet those needs. Yeah, my most important advice or guidance for the end of this video is projectors should not be getting into relationships unless they are like recognized and invited into them. But that's how the relationship starts, right? Like we don't get involved with the other unless it's according to strategy. Wait, recognize, invited, compensated, you know, like they're paying for the date kind of thing. But once you're in that relationship, do not put like all of your self-worth into having this partner consistently recognize you, consistently validate you. Like a partner is not like a recognition button for a projector to just hit over and over and over again. Like, tell me I'm pretty, tell me I'm smart, tell me I'm like, you will exhaust the hell out of your partner if you do that. You have to have clients, friends, like you have to have other people in your life that are coming to you for your guidance, that you're getting recognition from, that are validating you, that are bringing you success, putting you in your signature. You have to be invited to be in a relationship, but once you're in, don't make it that person's job to consistently like make you feel worthy as a projector. I mean, you do that, you're gonna burn out your relationship very fast. I don't really know how I feel after this video, if I'm being honest. I was like, oh man, I feel like I've made some mistakes. But I don't really feel shame about it too much anymore. I just kind of feel this like lingering aftertaste of like, I'm not eating that again. As for the fact that I am currently single, I don't expect that to change for me. And I don't mean ever, I just mean like, I'm not seeking a change. I'm not looking. I'm not going out to initiate. I'm not out there trying to make myself feel better by finding someone to love me. I don't need someone else to love me to make me feel like I'm lovable. I love me. And in loving myself, I eat how I want, I sleep how I want, I work how I want, I play how I want. The only way that I'm going to be willing to give, and see, that's the thing, I'm like, it's not give that up. I'm not willing to give that up. The only way that I'm going to be willing to share in this is with somebody who doesn't ask me to give it up. Either a manifestor will initiate me, or a generator will invite me, or a projector will like co-recognize me. And yet I'm at the place where I don't want to be with a different type. It doesn't work for me to be in relationship with another type. I don't want to be with a manifestor that I can't penetrate, that I can't read, that I can't get in their aura. I don't want to be in a relationship with a sacral being. I have a sacral child. Like, my needs on sacral stuff have been met. They've been surpassed. I crave projector to projector communion. I really like talking to someone who feels relatable to me. Now, beyond that, like, again, I'm not seeking, but I have resistance to things that I've already tried that I know didn't work. So all I can do now is wait and see what strategy and authority brings me.